Right.
Morning. Welcome to the community briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed. Today is the 10th of July in the year 2025, and we are glad you are here. We've got a great show for you today. We have Dr. Thela Thatch, and she is a leading HR consultant. She's got her PhD in public policy and law, and so she's going to be sharing some wonderful ideas and thoughts and considerations for all of us. My name is Gregory Sneed, CEO of Lifesaver Financial Services. I help my clients keep more of the money they make and feel better about their money. Now it's my pleasure to welcome to the virtual stage the queen, the Biz Camp queen of the community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you to the community briefing. I hope you all had a nice day off last week, the holiday for the 4th of July. Hope you all are being safe. The community briefing was an inspiration of mine in 2020. It was for the purpose of making sure our community knew what was going on in the community, where the money was during the pandemic. And also, most importantly, for you to meet the leaders and stakeholders that were in our community making things happen. Sometimes there's silent warriors behind the scene. And so we want to make sure you guys know who is doing what out here in the business world. And again, my name is Crystal Mitchell. I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, as well as a business coach in the community, making sure that our business owners get all that they need to get in order to be successful businesses. This platform is powered by the LA LDC, as well as Urban Excellence and Southern California Edison and SoCal Gas, as well as Wells Fargo Bank. And we are powered by Recycling Black Dollars and supported by the BBA, which is the Black Business Association. I want to welcome you to the community briefing this week. We have a fantastic team. You've already met Mr. Greg Sneed. You also, Mr. Stephen Turner, he is our producer. Would not happen without him, because he's the one that does all the connecting. And Ms. Robin Phillips, she'll be checking in a few minutes. So she's the other female energy. And today we have a fantastic guest. I've met her a couple of times on my other podcast, The Business Zone. So you guys will be enthused. And today I have a number of students from the Biz Camp. You guys can take yourself off of, put your screen up, show yourselves and say hello to everyone. And this is the aspiring class for 2025. You guys should be seeing them soon in the future.
Hello.
Tell them all hello.
Hello.
These are all the beautiful faces.
Chris and Cameron, Kayla, Azaria, Gabriel.
And that's my co-teacher over there, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah.
And so glad to have you all and with us. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Greg, and he's going to kick it off. The kids and I will be here for a short period of time, and then we will be disappearing a little bit because they have work to do. But just wanted them to meet you and see what it's like to be on a podcast. All right, back to you, Greg.
Awesome. And it's a wonderful thing that but definitely what Crystal does in providing opportunities for our youth, our young ones to get exposed to business. The world functions around business in many ways, and businesses has many different facets. Today, we're going to learn about one aspect of business that gets into the field of used to be called employee relations, used to be personnel, human resources, staffing. There's all kinds of names that come up and change as our times change. And so Dr. Thatch will be leading that discussion with us as we speak. So welcome, and we're glad that everybody is here. And what ages are your students?
They are 13 to, I think the oldest one is 17. We take up to 18, but
right.
13, 18, and a couple of them are actually in business now. And we'll probably have them on my other podcast once we determine who is actually winning this competition. And so but a majority of them have come without any ideas. And so that's what we're doing right now is coming up with the ideas and making sure that the ideas are viable, money making opportunities for them.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so hold on here, trying to admit a couple of people, doing double duty here. All right, so our guest today is Dr. Thela R. Thatch. She'll have to tell us momentarily what the R or ARA stands for. So everybody know that sometimes the R is one syllable, and some people say it is two syllables, R and ARA. But she is a leading HR consulting firm and founder and CEO of her company. And she's been doing that for the last 15 years. Her expertise is in diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI, you guys have been hearing a lot about DEI, in some cases what it is, and in many cases what it is not. So we'll get some clarity on that. But it's strategies that are demonstrated through her PhD in public policy, and she has a rich legacy of fostering organizational development. And so her devotion lies in sculpting inclusive cultures, driving talent management. And she was at Paychex, where she spearheaded DEI initiatives for over 15,000 employees. So she was there. She was head of the diversity and inclusion. She was a human resources coach. She's worked with the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services, previously with Live Nation as a chief diversity officer. Strayer University, she's a professor in human resources management, AS staffing, which was with UPS as a staffing consultant, ADC, Paychex again. She did some work on the Cosby Mysteries, Fox Television production assistant. She has her doctorate of philosophy and PhD in public policy from Walden University, also a master of philosophy from Walden University. And she went to North Greenville University, got her MBA in university. I got her MBA in business administration, and Keene University got her BA in communication. We did not get a chance to find out where she's from, where she grew up. We see, I think she's living here in the Los Angeles area. Whether I know she was born and raised here in LA. She's from the East, the Midwest, the South. So she'll share that with us as she joins us right now. So please give her a welcome to Dr. Thela Thatch.
Thank you. Thank you. I can hear the applause. Thank you so much. I am originally from East Orange, New Jersey, home of Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature, Whitney Houston, so many other, John Amos, Cicely Tyson. So
Isley Brothers? Well, Isley Brothers from East Orange?
I never heard of that one, but maybe.
They're from Jersey. I think
They probably from Jersey, but East Orange is a very special place. And if you're from East Orange, you say East Orange. You don't say orange. You say orange.
Well,
So
we have one of our members is actually
Destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny
She's from East
Nickerson.
Orange.
You know,
East
East
Orange.
Orange people are very special people. And
Yeah,
if you're from East Orange, you know that. Very
Newark
strong.
adjacent, right?
And I grew up in Newark. My dad lived in Newark, so I grew up near the Prince Street projects. If you're familiar with Newark, you know Prince Street. And my grandmother lived on Barclay Street, so I am very familiar with East Orange and Newark. Again, I went to school at Keene University. The R in my name stands for Rachel. My dad's name is Richard, and my name is Thela, rhymes with relay. Rachel Hostin Thatch. So Dr. Thela Rachel Hostin Thatch, and that's where I'm from. I lived in East Orange and the Oranges for over 35 years until I relocated to South Carolina, finished raising my family there, Columbia, South Carolina. Go Irmo. Some people might know Irmo, South Carolina. And then I was relocated here to Los Angeles for a role at Live Nation Entertainment, where I became the regional HR manager servicing over 3,000 employees and the North American Concert Division. So doing everything from hire to fire to retire for that group. I became the first director of festivals, and that's enough of my resume. So I want to talk about
And the
compliance.
Isleys were from Teaneck. It just hit me in the head. They were
Oh
from
yeah, I
Teaneck,
didn't
New
think they're
Jersey.
from East Orange, or we would
Yeah,
have claimed them a long time ago. So
Teaneck.
I'm going to share my screen. I only have 20 minutes. That's what I'm aware of, and I want to make sure you have time to ask any questions. Is my volume good?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen and just have an easy, quick presentation. Um, so from compassion, from compliance to compassion. So when we think about human resources, we always think about compliance. And I have actually had to delve into why do I do human resources? Why is HR, why has that been my choice of a career? So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of today's community briefing. It's always an honor to join you in spaces where knowledge, collaboration, and action are the foundation, especially in times like these. So I wanted to make sure my message was extremely clear, trying to stop blending into my background, sorry. So I'm Dr. Thela Thatch. I'm the creator of Mrs. HR in a Box, which is a a technology solution for companies to be able to get HR solutions through technology and AI. I am the author of The Diversity Dilemma, and I also have my own podcast called the Ask Mrs. HR podcast. And I share this because not to just market what I'm doing, but to let you know that I've created these platforms so we can create safe spaces, psychologically safe spaces. So working in HR, that is one of the biggest challenges that I have day to day is making sure our work environments are safe, that they have a spirit of collaboration and compassion and compliance at the same time. So today I want to explore how human resources, when aligned with public policy and people-centered leadership, can be used not just as a compliance tool, but as a vehicle for equity, a vehicle for sustainability and for transformation. So this is who I am. We went through all of that. This is my bio. One of my favorite quotes, and I say it different ways and different times, is change is a form of science fiction. So some of the things that I love to do is watch science fiction. And I like to remind people that anytime we are moving in a place of change, it's something new. It's something that we've never done before. And to me, that's the definition of science fiction. It's imagining how things could be different. Another thing I say often is HR is where the law meets the lived experience of your people. So what I'm doing every day is I'm using employment law, different laws, federal, state laws to kind of push, pressure, and encourage and influence change in the organization based on the laws. Why is that so important? Well, we're looking at an administration, the first week of that administration, they came in and tried to make changes using executive orders to change the law. Law is where we are able to, in policy, public policy and laws, this is where we're able to really build equitable environments. Without these policies, there is no equity. So going to the diversity dilemma. When I talk about the diversity dilemma and I talk about my book, I'm really talking about my experiences in workplaces where when we talk about DEI, and this book was written before this administration came into office. So I wrote this book about almost 2 years ago now. And I was talking from my experience of how diversity, equity, and inclusion often becomes a dilemma to those people historically marginalized people who are trying to find diversity. So prior to 2025, we spent a lot of time as DEI practitioners defining over and over and over again, what is diversity? What is equity? What is inclusion? And we spent a lot of time spinning our wheels just trying to get people to understand that DEI is important. Now, 2025, love it, like it, hate it, people know what DEI is. They either agree with it, they don't. We've been learning some people have been changing the way it's messaged. Some people have been changing the way we talk about it. But the reality is small businesses, nonprofits, underserved communities, we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI is not illegal. DEI will always exist as long as we exist. So as long as we're diverse, as long as we want equity, we all want equity, we all want fairness, and we all want to be inclusion. That will never be taken away. So the diversity dilemma speaks on that. This is just one tool that I use to teach what DEI is. And when I wrote the book, I called it a survival guide for diversity and inclusion good doers, because one of the most difficult things that I experienced when doing this work at a corporate level was constant pushback that caused my own trauma. It caused my own unsafe psychological trauma, because every day I was trying to convince someone that I was equal, that I was worthy to be in that space. And so I just want to make sure it's super clear in 2025, due to laws like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we have the ADA. We even have, I was talking to some of my students last night about the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people don't understand that the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, also nicknamed Obamacare, everybody was pushing, they didn't want Obamacare. Obamacare changed the equitable landscape. Just one part of Obamacare changed people's lives, allowing people to have preventive care, health care. Do you know what that means? And I shared this with my students. That means that you can prevent having cancer because you can afford to get a mammogram. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, the preventive care was not covered. Preventive care was not covered. So who would get mammograms and be able to go for doctor's visits even when they weren't sick? Rich people, people who had money. So if you think about it, that's one reason Obamacare / the PPACA took so much heat, because it was causing corporations to now be responsible and equitable, to offer rights and benefits to people who normally didn't receive it. This was game changing, and this is why the ACA still to this day takes up so much heat, and people are trying to reverse the ACA because it's set up to be equitable, to give people who normally do not have benefits. So that's just one example of how policy is translated into the work we do in workplaces. So as an HR person, I have to understand, what is the ACA? What are my employees and employers' obligations and rights under the ACA? And how do I make sure that's administered day to day? So that talks about DEI. So on the other side, when we talk about compliance, one of the things that I'm working on is this solution and I thought about it this morning when I woke up. I'm like, why am I doing this work? I want to be able to get the hard stuff out of the way so we can start focusing on empathy. We can start focusing on having real relationships with people. And I think I'm listening. So we can start working on that with people. So Mrs. HR in a Box and FYHR partnership, that is created to make HR easier. And so it's an on-demand HR transformation designed for the real world. It's smart, it's scalable, and it puts humans first. And so the bottom line is, as we're working in human resources, how do we put humans first? And so I just wanted to share about those few things. So moving on, the multitasking, excuse me. Moving on, how do we lead inclusively when we have a politically divided landscape? So right now I'm working on what real transformation means. What does rewriting the narrative around a person who is qualified, what does that look like? How do we choose courage over comfort when we make decisions in leaderships? So, for example, some of my calls to action with leaders are, let's stop hiring for fit, but start hiring for value. And then last but not least, how do we turn strategy into impact? So whether you lead a nonprofit, a school district, a city department, you have to understand as the leader, the CEO, you have the power to make the change within your organization. So HR is typically a partner. We give you the tools. That's why I shared the tools like books like Diversity Dilemma, FY HR tools, whatever that tool is. It could be HRIS software. It could be, a learning management system. Whatever that is, using those tools to make the changes you want to see in your environment. So how do we lead with compassion and compliance? There's a few different ways. You can conduct HR audits through an equity lens. You can create transparent pay structures. That's something we have the benefit in California where there's laws around pay structure. You can ground anti-bias training into real stories, not just corporate buzzwords, and really showing empathy with the people that you work with. And you can build clear, kind, and compliant employee handbooks. That's one thing my organization does. So I've seen this work. For example, one of our clients rewrote their leave policies with an equity lens and saw a 40% increase in employee satisfaction. Another revised their disciplinary process, and instead of calling it a disciplinary process, they changed the way they approach progressive discipline and cut their turnover in half in under 6 months. So the way you approach HR can really build your business, whether you have 10,000 employees or 2 employees. The right strategy builds trust. It prevents legal exposure. So I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about that. But when we talk about DEI, again, we're talking about people being protected under the law, right? So you have people who are in protected groups. They still need to be protected. No matter what this administration says, these people, we are still protected. And so if you're not protecting these people, you're putting your organization at risk. And part of what we always want to do is mitigate risk. So let me bring it back to the heart of today's conversation. We want to talk about transformation. We want to make sure it's about people, and we want to make sure we use policy as power to make the change. So if you take nothing else from our time today, remember that policy can either be a weapon or it could be a welcome mat. So choose wisely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about diversity, and I'm gonna preface it with a little bit of a story, but I'd like to kind of focus on that because we hear a lot about what it is and what it isn't. Wow, 40 years. So I'm thinking about the time, how long ago it was. So 40 years ago, I went through a training program with Coca-Cola in Atlanta, and it was talking about diversity. And diversity wasn't racial. It was, at the time, employees at Coke headquarters, if you went to the University of Georgia, you were favored. So as a white male, you would be favored to get the job as opposed to someone who went to the University of Florida or went to the University of North Carolina. Okay. So they would just,
wouldn't that be racial? You just mentioned white.
I'm just saying that, yes, that is racial, but I'm saying a white male, right, versus another white male, would be hired over because they went to the University of Georgia versus a white male that went to the University of Florida.
Okay, would that be based on socioeconomic status?
Just because they went to that school, had nothing to do with socioeconomic. It was just diversity in terms of thought process and diversity of an employee base, of having multiplicity in personality types. So diversity was looked at back then in terms of having different a school of thoughts, having people from different backgrounds, regardless of race, regardless of gender. So diversity was included because then that was still affirmative action was for the racial promotion and also gender. So I'm just trying to track back to where diversity got started in terms of thought process. Diversity where you might have people who are outspoken versus people who are very compliant. That you wanted to have a diverse work staff
Mhm.
irrespective of race. So now DEI has 40 years later has transitioned to in many ways a an affirmative action sort of replacement in their minds, where the biggest benefactor for DEI hires, I'm sure you can go into that, are not necessarily minorities. So where are we headed in terms of a culture? What is DEI? Because I'm sure you get that a lot, and to what it is and what it is not.
So that's a loaded question. And
Yep.
DEI, where we headed as a culture is, I like to think, being more aware of the necessity for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think the bottom line is DEI is more than an acronym. DEI is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And they all go hand in hand. Where are we headed? We're headed in the same direction we've always been headed. Diversity needs to be celebrated, whether it's the celebration of the different colleges you've attended, different languages you speak, the multicultural way that you identify. And in the same way, equity is where we're headed in the future.
Uh oh. And when it freezes that long, that
Opportunities.
oh, there she's
Oh,
back. Okay.
oh, I was gone. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness
yeah,
me.
you froze a little bit. So you were talking,
Oh, oh, my
you're
internet
moving
connection
from diversity to equity.
to
So you're going
equity.
into, yeah. So
So
what is equity?
yeah, just saying equity is never going to go anywhere. The future of equity will remain the same because people want fair chance. They want a fair chance in employment, fair chance in housing, fair chance in rights and benefits and maternal health. That will never change. People will fight and die for equity. No matter what president we have, what administration, where you live, that is the nature of our being, is to want equitable, no matter what. So, and then inclusion, we're learning. So part of the DEI work and the narrative is really teaching and learning how to be inclusive. I would like to say that it's not always natural to be inclusive. Sometimes we have blind spots around inclusion and biases. So in the future, I think, especially with our new generation, Generation X and Y, they're very inclusive. They refuse to be left out, and so they want to make sure that they're going to be included in the conversation. And I think we're just going, truthfully, we're going to see more. It may not be called DEI; it could be called IED, BEID. You can call it whatever you want, but it will continue. And as long as we are human, we all want those rights.
It actually sounds like a great idea to call it IED instead of
Well, people do. I call it JEDI. I call it Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And people love that because it reminds them of Star Wars, but it is absolutely the same thing as DEI. There's no difference, and it's not going anywhere. It's just DEI has become a name that they've tried to make a negative, similar. That's why I went into my conversation about Obamacare. Obamacare, they were trying to make the initiative negative because it was supported by Obama, but it was actually to support all different things under the Affordable Care Act. That's the name of it. And so that's why my challenge in doing this work is making sure we define what we're talking about. We're talking about equity, we're talking about inclusion, and we're talking about fair rights for all.
yeah. And what I was kind of driving at is that diversity was a broader concept. It wasn't just really restricted to race. DEI, diversity, didn't mean it often conflated with affirmative action. It didn't mean giving somebody who was underqualified a chance. It meant actually someone who was either qualified or protect, in some cases, overqualified for a position and still
Right.
couldn't get hired because someone who had less credential or less experience was hired over someone who was more qualified,
Yeah.
and they were ruled out because of gender or race or what school they went to, or whatever it was.
Exactly. And that's a narrative that we have to continue to fight because we all know that that's a false narrative, that people are not hired only because they're Black. You're Black and you have 10 times more experience, 5 more degrees, 10 more, years. You have a lot. Typically, when you do hire someone who is from a historically marginalized group, they typically have more experience. They've been so they've had a harder time to get that opportunity. So they weren't just selected because they were Black. They were selected because they had the qualifications, the experience, the knowledge, the skills, and they happen to be Black.
Right.
So there's absolutely no way you're going to put anyone in a role without the knowledge, skills, and experience. And so we're trying to get past this. Personally, in my book, I talk about in the diversity dilemma, we're trying to get past this idea that as Black people, people of color, that we have to work 10 times as hard, because that is hard on our mental, our physical, and our spiritual and emotional, every part of us, right? We have to get past this narrative that we are enough and that we don't have to work 10 times as hard to get into an organization. That's why I love this community of entrepreneurs, because we need to create opportunities where people can just be in this space and be themselves.
Great. Can you share a little bit more with us about what is equity? Equity, I know it's a broad concept. I always thought of equity, one simplistic way is that if you have two people doing the same exact job, and one was a male and one was a female, that in theory they should really be at the same pay scale. Well, what we found oftentimes is that it was gender, that if you were a female, you were paid less, even though you were doing the same job as a male counterpart.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. There's a law called the Equal Pay Act that makes it illegal to pay someone less because of their gender. So even though that law is in effect, like many laws, often we have to apply that law through lawsuits to make sure that people are paid equally. So currently, women still make 80 cents to every dollar. And that is a good example of what equity is. So one image I always use is a bicycle. So if I was to say, hey, everybody on this call, let's go ride on a bicycle, would I give us all the same size bicycle? Would I give you all a 10 speed? I'm 5'11". There might be people on this call who are 4'9". Do we all get the same bike? No, sometimes you have to make an adjustment. You get a 7 speed, 7 inch or whatever bike, 10 speed. I get a 7 speed. You may have people who do not have the ability of their legs. They may need a specially adjusted bike. But should we tell them that they can't participate because they can't fit on the bike? And that's the part of equity that our country in general has a problem with, is making adjustments for people who may need, and that's what the difference is between equality and equity, is equity meets the need of the person, because I may need a adjustment to my bike, but this is, in our capitalistic society, that's a problem. They're like, well, pull yourself up, fix your own bike. My grandmother fixed her bike, so I don't know why you need a new bike. I used this bike for 10 years. You keep using the bike. Equity says, because of XYZ, whatever my need is, I am going to help you have the same equal treatment and opportunity based on your need. So that's the difference. And that's the problem, because people don't want to make adjustments. They want us all to have the same bike, the same 10-speed bike. And if you can't fit on it, you just can't get on it.
Right, right. And then
Thank you, Destiny from East Orange.
one last piece. I see we have a couple questions as we get to you after this one. Talk to us really a bit about the inclusion part. So we've talked about diversity, we talked about equity. What's inclusion about?
When I first started doing this work, I was working with Renee Myers, and she said, inclusion is being invited to, no, diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. So just like I described, a lot of times as people from marginalized
Bum, 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 bum,
Communities.
bum.
Inclusion looks at how do we include everyone? How do we include you? Uh-oh, am I still there?
You're
Okay,
back.
my internet says stay unstable. How do I include? How do I include you? And it sounds really simple. Empathy sounds simple. Belonging sounds simple. Being kind sounds simple. Inclusion is one of those things that takes work. Inclusion is requires action. You are actively including someone. You are saying, "Oh, I see Crystal's quiet. Let me figure out a way to include her into this conversation." Not, "Oh, well, Crystal just needs to figure out how to speak up. Too bad for her. Next." That's some of that old school, old guard mentality that we're working on when we're doing DEI work. We're saying we're including all personalities, we're including all skills, all knowledge, all abilities, all backgrounds, right? That hasn't always happened in the United States of America. We only
Mhm.
include, like you said, those people from the University of Florida and their cronies and their friends and whoever else. And the rest, you're on the outskirts and you have to
Right.
figure out how to get in. So the in part is the action where if you're in a position of privilege or you're in a position of power, you are actively including others when you have that position.
Hmm. Hmm. That's great. That's good. Thank you for that. That's important. And
Good.
it's okay for your internet to be unstable. It's a problem with you're unstable. So
And sometimes I can be unstable when we talk about this stuff.
one of the questions we have is that what are some great ways to incorporate DEI in organizations, especially nonprofit ones?
Well, it always starts with leadership. So doesn't matter if you're for profit or nonprofit, what do your leaders believe in? What is your mission? What is your value? How are you showing up and how are your leaders showing up? Because honestly, inclusion, equity, and diversity and justice is not going to go too far if the organization doesn't have leaders who truly are committed to it, because those people who are working in those spaces are going to get pushback. So attitude, one of my favorite quotes from Remember the Titans, the movie, is attitude reflects leadership. So get started by figuring out, is this nonprofit, do they really believe in inclusion? Do they really believe in diversity and equity? And maybe there's a level where you can influence them. But I would say this day and age in 2025, if you're pushing too hard, then they don't believe in it. And so you might need to just go to a different organization if that's important to you.
Hmm. Next question is, what do you see in the landscape with corporations that have been or are rolling back their programs and our current administration attacking diversity inclusion constantly? So are corporations that have scrapped DEI, is there an impact to them? Any noticeable impact? There's some who are doing nothing, some who have rolled back, and some companies that are embracing it. So what's
Yeah,
happening in that
I
landscape?
really, I've seen some articles. As you know, Target was one of the biggest targets of a company who decided to not embrace DEI. And I personally, just on a personal note, I haven't been to Target in months. I have no desire to go to Target. And there are articles and research that Target is struggling, especially with the Black community and others who just, we realize we don't really need Target, right? And on the flip side, Costco, I wasn't going to renew my Costco membership, but Costco is doing very well, even though they decided that they were going to continue to support their DEI initiatives. So I think it's too soon to tell, but one thing is clear is different communities, the Latino, the Black communities, they're seeing that we need to stand up for our rights. I mean, look at what's happening in terms of immigration. That's a huge piece of DEI, equity, rights, fair justice, and understanding that if you're silent, no one is coming to your rescue. So you have to speak up for yourself, and you have to make those challenging decisions. Am I going to support organizations or work for an organization that does not support me? So it takes professional courage. This is how I see as the future. A lot of people don't want to have these conversations, but these are real conversations that not only affects this generations, but generations to come. I think the question is, where do you want to find yourself when history is written? On what side of history will you be on when people ask, when your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren ask, well, what were you doing when they were marching and when they were taking our rights away and when they took away? So that's how I see the next steps. That's how I see corporations being effective. I see some corporations going out of business because there's so many generations right now. Yeah, right. No one is coming to rescue us. We must speak up, as someone put in the chat. And so that is going to affect how business is done. They may not see that, like an Amazon, for example, they may not see it immediately, but eventually, I believe consumers are smart. 90% of the world is minority. The US is just a small fraction. There are other places to buy materials. The United States is not the only place. Most people, we are a global, global consumer. So the United States, I just came from Africa last week. I could easily go live there, eat there, shop there. I don't have to go to Target. There's no Target there, right? We're in Senegal, where so yeah, I think corporations need to understand that it's a privilege for us to shop with them. And DEI will always be front of mind for us. Period. It's never going away, ever.
Feels a little better if you call it Target, I guess, right? Instead of Target. Um, are we seeing examples, or are we seeing where people who are, well, the term used in the question was uber qualified or super qualified, being replaced by people who are far less qualified? Are we seeing?
That's interrupting in HR for 25 years. I think we've been seeing that example since the beginning of time. One of my topics my dissertation is actually on the impact of executive hiring on social service programs that support the homeless in LA County. And yes, you have to have a long title if you're going to have a dissertation. But the point is, it was around critical race theory. It was around, I'll have people walking behind me, sorry. It was around cronyism, sexism, ageism. So these things have always existed. It's, again, I kind of could give, some form of gratitude to this new administration that has highlighted DEI and brought it into the conversation. But it's always existed. And yes, people have always been looked over because of whether the color of their skin, the marital status, and that's why we had to have certain policies in place to protect people from discrimination based on their protected class. So that was when you see, and I always like to talk about, we see Martin Luther King standing over the shoulder of President Lyndon B. Johnson, and President Lyndon B. Johnson is signing the Civil Rights Act. That was years and years of violence, nonviolence, fighting, blood, sacrifice that led to President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the Civil Rights Act so we can even have this conversation today. So I don't know what the question was anymore, but the point is, I think the answer is yes to whatever the question was. Yes.
Yep. So you've heard of the 30-second commercial. So this is your 240-second commercial of what do you do? How do you help companies, individuals? What are your services? And in some cases, it may be challenging for a small organization to really be the do all everything in HR. So some things need to be, or probably should be, outsourced. So tell us about your business.
Sure. So I started my business Ask Mrs. HR. So when I was working in different corporations, they would say, "Uh-oh, here comes Mrs. HR." And so I took that on as Mrs. HR. My overall business is Thela Thatch Consulting, and I do every single thing that an HR department would do, from hire to retire with a little bit of fire. So I help organizations manage their employees. Everything I do is through a lens of equity. So one thing I may help an organization with is an employee handbook. When looking at the employee handbook, is it equitable? Help you with job descriptions, help you with managing employees with employee relations issues, with different, unfortunately, claims or lawsuits. I'm not an attorney, but I am very well versed in employment law. I've studied that, I'm certified. And so my business does everything from hire to retire with a little bit of fire.
What's the I want to say sweet spot of a firm or entity? Obviously, any of us who are one man or one woman shops, we're not going to need an HR group because it's really just us. But I don't know whether it's two people or five people, 10, and then there's probably an upper limit too, where it becomes better or more cost effective for a company to do it on their own. So what's that sweet spot where you fit in?
Most of my clients have 20 to 200 employees. However, I would like to offer that if you have two employees, like myself, you can benefit from HR review in terms of an employee handbook, building your what I call pre-capacity. You have to get ready for capacity, right? And so, but the sweet spot for my business, truthfully, is 2 to 200 employees, and just really helping clients get their HR foundation strong. So I like to, sometimes my clients know I call myself Mary Poppins. I like to come in, fix everything, and then take my little umbrella and fly away so they can hire an actual HR person. Typically, my clients do not have an HR person. They do not know HR. They think they do. They've taken their cousin who's the, office manager, and they have that person doing everything. So just really making sure I'm training them on employment laws and all things human resources so that their business can run. There's certain things that they hit these obstacles and these walls that they really don't have to if they were to talk to an HR consultant.
And share with us a little bit about obviously there's federal laws, there's state, county, and perhaps municipal. Are you focused on California? Do you expand outside of the state, or because
Yeah.
because I know that can be a little dicey. Where state of California does one thing, Nevada might do something different, or
Well,
Jersey.
anybody who does HR knows that California is the model for all of HR because California has the strictest laws. Are you right? So I do California, but one of the company's clients that I work with, even today, they have they have an organization in West Virginia. I do multi-states. So when you're trained to do human resources, you're trained to do it for the United States. I actually teach HR professionals. I have a class coming up this weekend on PHR certification. And when that's taught, it's taught at a federal level. So when we're taught to do HR, we're taught federal laws, FMLA, Title VII, those are all federal laws. And then we're taught to look at like you said, the state laws on a case-by-case basis, because depending on the situation, a federal law may I even didn't want to use the word Trump. A federal law may
Supersede.
supersede, thank you very much, supersede a state law. So yeah, but no, if you're an HR professional, you're trained on federal and state laws nationwide. It's not like, oh, let me pick and choose. You have to know all. Do I provide payroll services? I have, yes, I'll just say yes. And I also provide benefits. I'm a licensed accident health insurance broker. And so for those, especially for those entrepreneurs who have it's just two of you or three of you, and you're struggling because you're like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have medical. That's something I can help with. Oh, I'm on a podcast. So that'll help those type of people. Sorry, my clients are like, what are you doing?
Yeah, right. So, share
Yeah.
with us a little bit about how that changes or gets complicated with a lot of the remote working, where people, and then, sort of the return to office mandates And if a company is based in California, but somebody's remote working in, let's say, Nevada or Arizona, which state laws come into play? That can seem like that would get a little
Oh,
dicey.
yeah, you're absolutely right. That would be complicated and it could be dicey. And the best thing I could say is you should contact me because everything, we're dealing in human resources is case by case. So I would caution anyone, if someone gives you a blanket answer, most likely is not a good answer. So yeah, you have to look at the culture. Why are they working remote? Um, what laws are in place, what precedents have been set in the company. There's a lot of different nuances that you need to take into consideration. So it's really no one answer. And I say that in my business, there's no one size fit all. Each business has their own needs depending on the size, depending on their goals, their culture. So that's the work that I do, is trying to understand the business, understand, what I constantly come in looking to fix um, glaring gaps in their processes.
And are you seeing an increase in issues regarding they call it RTO, return to office, where people were 5 days in the office, COVID happened, so they were working remotely. Now the employer wants to bring them back to the office, and the employees like, no, I'm good right here.
No, honestly, I think that's starting to fade away. Most organizations have understand and have seen that employees can work from home. So the question really is to the employer, what is the need for them to come into the office? So you have to ask that question. So again, it goes, some employees like to work from home, but no, I'm seeing more companies encouraging remote work. So I'm seeing that more.
Is there anything that shows where remote employees are equal, more favorable, or less favorable in terms of promotion? Because you're not there, you're not getting that face time and interaction time that you would with being in the office, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak.
Yeah, I've definitely have had conversations around how do you keep remote workers engaged? And I've come up with games like Kahoot, and is we definitely have had these talks about leaders having to lead and make sure that they're reaching out to their staff, making sure that they're communicating. Honestly, this remote work conversation falls a lot on the leaders and really challenging their beliefs of what productivity looks like. We can't go back to this old way of thinking that just because someone's sitting at their desk, they're productive. I remember working for one organization, they were sitting at their desk 10 hours a day watching Netflix. They were there. That didn't mean they were productive. I was watching them. They had one screen typing and one screen watching Netflix. Okay. So you can't just say, I'm here because I'm in a chair at my desk, I'm productive. So leaders have to be more creative to measure what is productivity to you? What is the criteria of productivity? And truthfully, with this generation, my generation, and generations to come, you got to be able to answer it or they're not going to work for you. They're like, I could go drive Uber.
In our last 2 minutes, what would you like to say or cover that we haven't covered in our conclusion?
Oh my goodness. I like to say that this space is necessary. The community briefing, making sure you recognize, all of us collectively, that a lot of people don't have access to this information. When I talk to groups of people, they don't realize they have federal rights under the Family Medical Leave Act. Some people have never even heard of the Family Medical Leave Act, and they're one day from losing their job because they haven't exercised their rights under federal work employment laws. And I think I always tell people, go look in your break room at the poster. Your rights are on the wall, right? Read those rights. And I'm not trying to be facetious, but sometimes our audience have never, ever, ever thought about their rights. They don't know that they cannot be fired for filing a workers' comp claim, like things like that. These are the certain myths that our community has, especially the Black community. We've been taught to keep our head down, be quiet, don't say anything. But there is a level where you have to speak up, know your rights, and make sure you are holding your employer accountable for the things that you're eligible to have. Benefits. I have some of my clients, they tell their employees that they have benefits and then they don't, and that's why I'm there. I'm like, you have to communicate these things. So that's the last thing I'll say. I always say at the end of any conversation, go through an audit of your own benefits, of your own company. Are you showing up in an equitable way? Do you know what rights you have? Are you taking advantage of the 401k plan in your business? Do you have a 401k? Like do an assessment of your own rights.
You've heard of friends with benefits, employee with benefits, right?
Yeah, benefits are very important.
Would you be opposed to sharing your contact information, website, phone number in the chat?
Why ever would I be opposed? So let me try to put it in here. So the easiest way is Thela at thelathatch.com. That's my email. Please please go to YouTube and subscribe to my podcast. And if anybody on this call would like to be on the podcast, that's Thela Thatch. Just Google that on YouTube. I don't know the best way to put that. And
Well, if you can grab your YouTube channel and put the link in there, that would
yeah,
help.
I'm not that savvy right now,
Okay,
talking and
okay,
grabbing the channel. I
okay,
can't.
okay.
But just go to YouTube and put in my name, Thela Thatcher. It'll be that easy. The other thing is go to my Instagram, which is Ask Mrs. HR. So, I mean, not to be braggadocious, but Google me. Just put Thela
I'm there.
Thatch, and it will all come up, all the podcasts, probably my time with Crystal Mitchell on her podcast and all of those things. I'm excited to say that a lot of great things coming up. Thank you, Joseph. There you go. So go to YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, and if you want to be a guest on the show, we tape live in Santa Clarita.
Awesome.
I didn't know what to expect. This was a lot.
And if you had $1,000, if you had $1,000 for everyone who said Thela instead of Thela, how rich would you be?
I wouldn't
Right?
be talking to you. I would not be here. I'd be on a private island, grilling some delicious fish.
You corrected me more than once, so I
It's
can
okay.
attest to that.
Crystal,
Don't call me late
Crystal,
for
over to
dinner.
you, Crystal.
All right. Yeah. And when she was on the Business Zone, that's one of our highest watched shows. Actually, when I went back out and edited and put the information on. So, and at the time, it was right at the very beginning of the elimination of DEI and all of the drama that was going on. And she did an excellent job. So if you guys want to see that, you want to go over to the Business Zone. I think you were on that would have been like February, I guess, January, February. It was like right after he had been after the inauguration, and we needed to know what was going on, and she really laid it out for us.
And I want to shamelessly jump in and say, continue to read about Project 2025 because the playbook is still being played.
Oh yeah, it is. In fact, I saw who was the senator that was in Atlanta. She was on recently on someone's podcast. I think Anthony Williams's podcast, and she was actually going through each of the steps. And we're now at step 11, which is interesting enough. And the step 11 was the completion of the authoritarian government.
Wow.
And every step that she went through, and this was a podcast some time ago. This was not something that was currently going on. This is as of right now. This was as of, I want to say about a year ago, actually. And she was telling every step, and we're now at step 11. And so obviously we need to do something, and we need to speak out, and we need to start coming together, which we've been talking about for a while. I think a couple of weeks ago, Emma, myself, and Roz had a conversation about that. And I was at a town hall meeting. So now it's imperative. So I have a number of entities that are coming together to create this coalition um, so that we can have some voice and not just sit here and wait for the troopers to come and round us up and take us wherever they're gonna take all these other people going. But now is that time.
We will be next.
Yeah, we will. So we
They are.
gotta
They're
Hi,
we
Emma
planning
gotta
on
have a
it.
Maxey. I
plan.
know you.
I know. I thought I recognized you. How you doing?
So thank
Great.
you all,
Huh?
Dr. Thatch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always an honor. Anytime.
Yeah. So guys, see you next week. Our guest is Janelle Brooks. She was the young lady of, I think she's the founder and president of Hugo. I believe that's what it's called. And she was razzling and dazzling in us a couple weeks ago, and then we had this really intrusive intruder, and we had to shut everything down. So we have her coming back now, and that person is permanently blocked out. That other person that was permanently blocked out. And so please come back. Go tell some people she's a pretty interesting lady, and we want her to finish her presentation to us. All righty. So guys, have a great one. Go over to our YouTube channel as well, the Community Briefing. Hit that subscribe button. All the shows that were there, and I will link in on this one, Dr. Thatch, the conversation you had with on the Business Zone about the early start of this whole project 2025 and this madness that we're going through right now. Okay. See, Delora, will we discuss the State of Black LA report? Delora, give me a call. Here's my information, and we can talk about that. But the National Coalition of Black Women, they're going to step up and see if we can all do something together, and a number of other CBOs that I've been talking to. All right, so, and just individuals, period. And anybody else that wants to join in to save us. I don't think I can handle being rounded up like my ancestors were. I know I can't. All right, guys, you have a great time. Be safe out there. Be cognizant of all of your surroundings. Bye bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye-bye.